Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Data Dialogues. I'm super excited to be joined here by Ajeet, who is a former Data Jam mentor, a Data Jam participant for a lot of years, and now has gotten involved with a master's, his undergrad. He's got a lot of great experiences to share in the world of data science and AI and all things in between. So, Ajeet, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Jackson.
Would you mind giving a quick overview about your experience, your backgrounds, and your role in the Data Jam, and then outside of it?
So I started the Data Jam during my undergrad at the University of Pittsburgh. There, I took the initial Data Jam class with Dr. Cameron, and from then on, I was a mentor for the rest of my undergrad. So for 3 years, I was a Data Jam mentor. I mentored four separate teams over that time period. There was a wide range of projects that they worked on, but overall, it was a great experience. And after graduating, I ended up doing a master's degree in comp sci at Georgia Tech. And there I got a lot more exposure into things like AI and machine learning. And I've been kind of leveraging the lessons I've learned from the data jam and bringing them into some of the stuff that I've worked on, such as using data for good and community-based applications. So I just graduated around 2 weeks ago, and yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Currently I'm looking for jobs, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Awesome. And do you have a fun fact about yourself that is outside the world of the data
Yeah.
jam?
Yeah, I don't know if there are any anime fans that might be watching, but I am fully caught up on the show called One Piece, which is over 1,000 episodes long, and I've read every single chapter of One Piece too. So it's one of my sort of main hobbies, I guess, is following that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have a favorite project that you've gotten to work on throughout your time at the data jam or in your
Yeah.
master's or undergrad?
Yeah. One project that really stuck with me was working on, it was in the class on vision language models during my master's degree. And
Mhm.
there, a lot of the projects were very math intensive or model
Yeah.
intensive, but the project that I worked on was about debiasing these sort of healthcare based models. And
Mhm.
what was really cool about working with that was the field of AI fairness or AI equitability
Yeah.
is super vast. And it also intersects a lot of aspects of psychology into AI and how we can effectively create AI that is objective in its analysis. It doesn't hold
Right.
certain demographic biases. So there I was able to work with using a data set to train a model and then seeing where it had gender bias when making diagnoses, right? And then with that, I was able to then implement an approach to actually remove the bias from that model, which is really cool. I think,
Yeah.
again, like you think AI is like just can be a chatbot sometimes, but
Mhm.
there's like such a wide range of possibilities that you can use with it. And the aspect of fairness is like awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, that is such an incredible area of research, especially as for better or for worse, more decision making is outsourced to AI. And even before it
100%.
was ChatGPT, there were algorithms making predictions about things from like credit scores to whether you default on a loan, whether you go back to jail. I remember reading about like algorithms that would predict people who were likely to recommit crimes, and judges were using that to make decisions.
Yeah.
And throughout this world of like algorithmic fairness, bias, and AI, how do you approach trying to figure out where the biases exist? Because sometimes they can be really hard to find. Is that right?
It can be hard to find. And I
Yeah.
think the best way to like go about it is honestly think about it in a way that humans go about things, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of ways, like we see these biases regularly across a lot of these social applications. I mean, in healthcare, there's so many papers talking about biases in women's health
Mhm.
and the aspect of some people, some demographics are just less likely to get diagnosed with certain diseases compared to others, right? It's an unfortunate reality, but the big thing with AI that we see is that they are trained on us after all. Like the data that they're trained on is built by us. And if we have those inherent biases, then surely enough, if we don't really do anything about it, AI is going to have them as well. So that's kind of the best way to go about it, I'd say.
Wow. Yeah, it's trained on the entirely fallible human data sets. And I remember
Yeah.
seeing stuff about like predictive policing a while ago where it's
Hmm.
learning from biased data where to police and where to look for crime, and it perpetuates a lot of those cycles. But specifically for your project, where did you detect the bias existed, and what was the change that you implemented to correct that?
Yeah, the big thing that we saw where gender bias could be an issue was that a lot of data sets that we found for diagnosing specifically PTSD and other mental
Yeah.
illnesses were primarily male dominated.
Hmm.
A lot of it was a simple finding. We found that most of the people that were interviewed were male in these data sets.
Yeah.
And as a result, like they're much more likely to have some inherent gender bias when evaluating because of that. So obviously, there are methods like just resampling a data set to
Hmm.
ensure a 50-50 balance between male and female. But we ended up having issues where the model became a lot worse at actually evaluating. So
Hmm.
because of that, we then kind of expanded into how can we do this by changing the model architecture. So that's kind of where we looked for a solution. Yeah.
Interesting. So the model that you were building, it was looking at transcripts, right, or interviews and determining
Yep.
whether participant had PTSD based on that transcript. And it was
Yeah.
predicting it was more likely for men to have PTSD than for female participants. And a lot of that was the data. So you built an algorithm on top of it to correct that and make a more equitable diagnosis. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, essentially. Like the big thing that we
Really
wanted to make
cool.
sure, yeah, the
Yeah.
big thing we wanted to make sure was that when we evaluate, we are able to make gender blind predictions, right?
Mhm.
Especially for something like mental illness, making sure that there isn't some sort of like inherent bias, like, oh, like you're a man, you probably have it or whatever, something like
Mhm.
that. But yeah.
That's really cool. And
Yeah.
throughout these different projects that you've worked on, I mean, this specifically is a really interesting one, but how do you go about taking an analysis that is potential action? Like, where there's something
Hmm.
that's we've detected here, this may or may not be useful. I know data is sometimes presented as information, and information has a lot of potential to make decisions on it, to turn it into action. But sometimes that action is lost, and it's more of a paralysis analysis, where you have a lot of data and then you
Yeah.
don't know what to do with it. So, how do you go about like throughout your projects in this one or others, taking this data, doing a really interesting analysis or building a model, and then turning it into something that is going to make a difference for whatever the project is?
Yeah. I think the first step is always like the aspect of ideation. And the
Hmm.
biggest part that comes with that is just doing something you care about. I think
Hmm.
that is a huge lasting lesson I took from the data jam. If you find something you care about, like you will find the reality of the world is you will find data on it. You'll find data of something relating to it. And I think that it is something where if you have a field or a specific uh, aspect of the world that you really are interested in,
Yeah.
pursue it. It is obviously the world of data is vast. It is very intimidating, but eventually it is about I think a big thing is you will be able to narrow it down after a bit.
Hmm.
Um, I found that for me, uh, Google, as much as Google hurts, it does help a lot. Even using AI nowadays is pretty helpful in finding data sets as well. Um, and as well, if you're into more of like research heavy things, Google Scholar is very helpful to just kind of run through stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Studying something that you're interested in makes such a difference, especially if it's just
Hmm.
a fun personal project or something like the Data
Yeah,
Jam where you really do go that extra mile when it's personally meaningful. And
exactly.
I think you're so right. There is data about the most random things that you can find and do
Hmm.
analyses on. I know we've done for the Data Jam projects on like UFO sightings by specific states, or even I'd call out Google Trends as like if you have a topic that you're interested in, you can look at how people have searched this topic historically over time, and Google has all that, most of that data publicly available just on the Google Trends website. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of data. And when you're going to, you wanted to start a project for the Data Jam just to maybe do something on the weekend to learn more about this crazy world of data and AI, where do you recommend getting started? So you have a data set, you have a topic that you might be interested in. What is the next step to building out something that you could investigate?
Um, I think the biggest thing that I like to do is a lot of literature review. I
Hmm.
think it doesn't have to be research papers. It can be just blogs. Nowadays, I love the website Medium. There's like blogs on how to do like any type of model, any type of statistical analysis or data analysis that maybe can apply to your data, right? Say you want to work with something as simple as, oh, I want to build a model that can talk to me, like a chatbot that can talk to me in Shakespearean language or something.
Yeah.
It's silly, but it's fun, right? And it can be as simple as like looking up, okay, how do I build a model to do this, something similar, right? And
Mhm.
eventually you'll find a blog that kind of gives you those first steps or some sort of website. The internet is like the best resource for these type of things. I think nowadays it's the best way to get started. So yeah, just don't hesitate to kind of get into the review. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice, I think, is scanning similar projects, other topics that are maybe it's a different topic, but the same method, and learning
Yeah,
from a lot of the past studies that people have done. You can actually save yourself a ton of time by seeing other people's analyses. And
100%.
I remember I was doing a personal project where I was interested in looking at like Shark Tank data and seeing like
Yeah,
what kind of entrepreneurs got deals. And I thought the project actually already existed. And so it saved me a lot of time of like, here are the results. And maybe you
yeah,
still want to go through the process yourself just for your own learning. But for me, I was like, I want to pick a slightly different topic that's adjacent to that because someone already did this. And this is great. I can build off of this project and save myself time.
exactly. Yeah.
What are some of the common mistakes or pitfalls that you see with teams working with data, especially for the first time, areas where people might get stuck or where there's opportunity to save a lot of time in that kind of vein?
Um, the biggest pitfall, I think I am a victim of this as well, is everyone loves to get into the analysis stage very early, the
Hmm.
the model building, the part where you get the results, when the sad reality is most of data science is finding data and then a lot of it is cleaning the data.
Yeah.
Data can be quite a pain to deal with. I remember I did a project where I was looking at permafrost data sets in Alaska, and the amount of missing data they had was unreal. I mean, we had to fill in holes so many times, and we
Yeah.
had to work with what was pretty sparse data. And at times it can feel like a massive pain, but you just got to go through it. You got to go through the nitty
Yeah.
gritty. And I promise eventually, once you get yourself a good working data set, like the possibilities then become endless. So I think like a big
Yeah.
thing is don't be too hasty when going through that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about what permafrost data you were looking at? That sounds very interesting.
Yeah. So we were looking at um so climate change is obviously affecting the world, and increased temperatures are leading to a lot of areas in the Arctic Circle to have melting permafrost, which has like a ton of issues because we don't really know what's under permafrost, which is essentially soil that is permanently frozen, right? A
Hmm.
layer of soil is permanently frozen. So we don't really know what's under there, which is a scary possibility. So we were trying to implement it's called a physics-based machine learning model, which
Hmm.
uses physical equations to actually optimize a machine learning model to give you predictions. So we were trying to do that to predict the actual ground temperature to see, okay, if it's getting close to freezing or getting close to that freezing threshold, this is like kind of an area of urgency that we need to look at. And
Yeah.
also the actual layer thickness of the permafrost sea, like how thick it actually is over summers and how susceptible is it to actually losing thickness as well. So
Wow.
yeah, a big area we looked at was Alaska because the data was pretty easily accessible for us,
Hmm.
thankfully. Um, and they do a decent amount of collection up there, but
Yeah.
it ended up being like some locations were really good and other locations were not so much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a weird, they had all different systems of collecting data. We had to kind of find a way to, make it work. But yeah.
That's really interesting. What were some of your biggest learnings and takeaways from that project?
Um, I think the biggest takeaway was data collection is really
Yeah.
tough for these
Yeah.
sort of climate-based applications. Um, because everyone has like slightly different ways of doing it. I mean,
Mhm.
in terms of time wise, some people collect data weekly, other people collect it monthly, depending on the resources they have. And that leads to sort of issues when we're trying to connect everything together.
Mhm.
Um, Also, a big thing is climate change is such a multifaceted problem,
Yeah.
and it is very hard to pinpoint a single issue or pinpoint a single predictor that you can really isolate. We were really struggling. We were able to create a strong evaluator, but while trying to find some sort of important predictors or important aspects that could actually be affecting it, we fell into a lot of trouble
Mhm.
as there are just so many variables that come into play.
Yeah.
But again, the work that's being done is still like the research being done is still awesome. And I think that like there are steps that are being taken to help improve that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it kind of highlights a theme throughout a lot of your research with climate change, mental health, these different projects
Yeah.
that you're working on. I know a lot of the public perception of data can sometimes be, big data, A, like it's confusing and it's hard to understand. But then
Yeah.
B, like when it is used, it's being used for somewhat nefarious purposes. Like I think everyone
Hmm.
knows that like your TikTok algorithm is pretty good at predicting what video you want to watch next. It's a lot of stuff about social media, reeling you in
Hmm.
with a very complex algorithm that's good at nailing down how do I keep this person on the screen for as long as possible. And a lot of these different traps, like seems like there's a lot of negative connotations with data. Someone's
Yeah.
watching you and they're using it against you to make money off of you usually.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of the work that you're doing is really interesting because just like a lot of data jam projects, it's community focused. It's looking at things that are inherently trying to make the world a better place. And I'm curious if you have any more perspective on these kinds of projects and how you can use data for good and to make the world better.
Yeah, I think it's similar to a lot of the data jam projects that are being done. It's
Mhm.
taking something that you care about and then trying to find a way to use data to fix that problem or make an impact in that problem. Um, I think these problems can be in places that you least expect, even. I know I recently, in a class I had last semester, there was a guest lecturer who was doing research on like social media and specifically the algorithms that are kind of pushing you content. And he was specifically looking at X. And a lot of his work is looking at actually fair algorithms. How can we create algorithms that aren't just feeding you a specific type of content? And especially on X, there's been a lot of problems with how the algorithm feeds you content. And I think that type of research, it may seem like initially in isolation that, you're using it for social network or using it for social media. It's not really the greatest application, but in a way, like you can find a way to, okay, if the system is flawed, what can I do to improve it? And I think those are like the best ways to go about it. And I'm sure everyone has their own perspective, their own views on what they can do to improve it or what they want to improve. So it really, the possibilities there are endless.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's great
Yeah.
advice. Do you have any other projects that you've worked on that have been personally meaningful or that you felt proud of creating an impact with?
Um, Yeah, I think my recent project that I'm working on, I feel like I'm really making a direct impact because it's I'm working with specifically like Georgia Tech University,
Mhm.
I mean the Georgia Institute of Technology, where we're trying to create an algorithm to actually electrify their vehicle fleet. So, but the club I'm working with, I mean, we have direct contact with the university, and they're like, we're able to actually like talk to managers directly and kind of give them recommendations as we are coming along and building up onto our project. And like that sort of thing is, I mean, it really puts meaning to what you're doing, right? Like it
Yeah.
feels like, oh, like I might be on a computer a lot of the time, like running these sort of things, but now I feel like my contributions are very direct. And that is like something that
Yeah.
feels obviously very like fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah, that must be an amazing feeling. So you're working on taking this vehicle fleet and turning it into electrical vehicles, but I'm sure you can't just like decommission all the cars and then bring in new cars. So it's like
Hmm.
that transition process that you're helping with.
Exactly. Yeah, trying to create a transition process that not only is like feasible for a manager, but also can really optimize savings for them and
Mhm.
also help make sure that, okay, we're doing this in the most like cost effective way possible. Yeah.
That's awesome. Last question for you here. What advice would you give to either high school students who are considering
Mhm.
what to study in college or college students who are considering going on to get a master's? What was your approach to your academic journey working within data science, applied math, like throughout your time at undergrad or grad? How did you navigate choosing the right major, going
Yeah.
on to additional schooling at Georgia Tech? How did you make those decisions? What would you recommend for others who are looking to make similar ones?
Yeah. I'll start out by just talking a bit about myself.
Yeah.
I was I started in engineering actually at Pitt. During my first year, I did the first year engineering curriculum, and after doing those classes, I think the biggest takeaway I had was I actually enjoyed the math classes the most. And
Mhm.
I think for me, I never realized that math was that much of an option. I
Mhm.
always thought, oh, like if I liked math, I could be an engineer. Engineers do math all the time. They apply math all the time. And I realized like having the opportunity to pursue like a degree in math was something that, oh, I would be a lot more passionate about doing that. And because of that, I ended up switching. And there, I got not only exposure to math, but also statistics. And a big thing that helped a lot was taking the data jam class and learning, okay, this is statistics also has a lot of this math heavy stuff and a lot of foundational stuff, but there also is the sort of modernized version of statistics, which is data
Yeah.
science, right? Where you're using data and leveraging it. And from there, like that kind of built my interest and it evolved more into fully data science and eventually into machine learning, where I decided I wanted to kind of have a more focused degree, which is what pushed me to do my master's. I think the overarching theme of kind of what I'm trying to say is pursuing your passions is always like the best way to go. At a lot of colleges, um, especially your larger state schools, the options you have for classes to take are endless.
Mhm.
If there's something you're interested in, if there's a gen ed you're interested in, just take it. I know like you might not have the space for it, but maybe another semester you will. And who knows, it could spark something. And once you get there, again, you can start pursuing the sort of career aspects like internships, full-time jobs, etc. And I
Yeah.
think now more than ever in those fields, talk to people, reach out when you can. It never hurts to ask because building that, I know it's like a bit cliche, but building that network, meeting new people is so helpful in kind of getting you those opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I also had a similar journey at Pitt, and that's one of the things I've loved about Pitt was the
Hmm.
opportunity to take a lot of different classes and see what you
Yeah.
enjoyed, see what teachers you were able to connect with. And I started firmly as an undecided major. I remember like going on campus tours when I was looking at colleges, and I would just make up a different major each time that I was interested in because I
Yeah.
wanted to have an answer. So I was like, oh, I'm like a neuroscience major one day, or I'm philosophy. And then when I was at Pitt, I just took a bunch of different classes. And for Pitt, I think most schools work like this. There's the general education requirements. You have to take a bunch of
Yeah.
classes anyways. So you're taking them, you're working through, you're seeing what you like. If you do like it, you can take more in that avenue. But I actually started as an applied math major at Pitt, and then I switched to statistics because I really liked
Yeah.
the statistics side of applied, even more applied than applied math. I like
Yeah.
to think about it. But that journey I think is completely normal to be able to figure out what you enjoy. Even if there's a specific class that you don't enjoy, sometimes that's valuable information. But if there's a certain skill that you could see leading to more opportunity, I think that's really good advice to be able to give yourself the freedom to explore and also either in the classroom or outside of the classroom, pursuing projects, getting involved in organizations on campus like um, Data Jam if you want to be a mentor, or you just want to, fire up your computer one day on the weekend, pull down a data set and make a couple visualizations about a topic you're interested in. I think it's really a great time to get started and to just, follow these interests and see where it might lead. So really appreciate that advice, Ajeet.
Yeah. I think 4 years doesn't seem like a long time, but you do not have to have everything figured out. I
Yeah,
think like it took me until like third year to understand what I really wanted to do. And I think a lot of people will vouch the same. So yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, great.
awesome. Any other final words of wisdom for all the people watching, whether they're a Data Jam student,
Yeah.
a participant, as a mentor, or even just anyone random who happened to stumble on these videos and is interested in learning more about data.
Yeah, big data is awesome in that you can do anything with it. Do whatever you want to do, pursue any sort of project, no matter how silly it is or how fun it is. I think the biggest thing I tend to forget when doing a lot of these projects is like you can have fun. You can do something that's interesting or like something that's like silly and you could still have a great time and also feel very fulfilled after doing it. So yeah, of
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Ajeet. Really appreciate getting to hear about
course.
all your incredible projects across these
Yeah.
different industries and your insight into the data jam journey. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jackson.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, everyone. We will see you in the next episode of the Data Dialogues. Take care.